Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Eventful Endeavors. I'm John with Felix and Fingers. And today we have Ali Simcho. She is one of the co-owners of Wanderlust Weddings and Events, one of the premier Pittsburgh wedding planners. Ali, thanks for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So we always just like to start off this industry that we work in and find out what brought people to it. So how did you end up being a wedding planner?
Yeah, always a fun question. I started a catering slash waitress job when I was 16 years old for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I have worked at PNC Park now for 20 seasons, which is insane because I'm, only 25, right? Yeah, been there for 20 seasons, going into my 21st season. I was waitressing, catering. I, during the off season, worked a lot of like corporate parties at PNC Park, a lot of weddings at PNC Park. And I remember seeing a like seating escort table with Pittsburgh popcorn on it and everybody's ticket or like seating chart number was on a Pittsburgh Pirate ticket. And I remember thinking, this is super cool. It was like my love for sports and my love for baseball, but also just like the wedding aspect in general. I felt super excited and like super happy that just like the bride and groom came up to us at one point and we're super thankful for the serving staff. And I remember just feeling so much excitement and joy in that setting for the first time. Obviously the Pirates the last 20 years have not been, too kind to us in the excitement factor. There was a couple good years in there that I've been there, but the wedding aspect really just brought so much joy and happiness to me in that setting. And I remember just thinking, I love weddings. Like I was probably 16 or 17 years old at the time. Was never a girl that thought about her own wedding day, but I feel like seeing it from that perspective on the behind the scenes aspect, I just really enjoyed it. In the meantime of me waitressing and serving for all the years that I was in school and in college, my sister was in Cleveland, actually in college. She had finished college in Cleveland. She's 6 years older than me. She had an education degree and had a really hard time finding a job. So she decided after 10 years of living in Cleveland to move back to Pittsburgh. When she did that, she met my now brother-in-law and we planned their wedding in 2014. It was in the Dominican Republic. There was many language barriers, lots of like, what is a pink rose versus what is a blush rose. And I remember thinking, this is the stuff I got excited for so many years before, right? Like the small details, the behind the scenes planning aspect. And after my sister's wedding, which was, one of the most fun weeks of our lives in the Dominican, my brother-in-law was like, you guys should do this. And we thought about it for a little. At that time, my sister had a handful of friends like just starting to get married. So we had planned like bridal showers here and there, some bachelorette parties. And then I really just kind of dove headfirst into saying, like, I think we could do this. And that's kind of how it started in 2015. So she got married in 2014. And then about a year later, in November of 2015 is when we kind of had a handful of weddings under our belt and we kind of launched our business.
And that was about 10 years ago. So tell me, because a lot of wedding planners that we work with, it's always so-and-so's name, like Jane Smith's Wedding Planning, Jane Smith's Events. Tell me about the name Wanderlust. How did you come up with that to tag your company?
Yeah. So being that my sister got married in the Dominican and just our love for travel in general, I think that we, one, knew that because there was two of us, we didn't want to use our names. Again, just my brother-in-law, who is very much in the business aspect of this, and he is 1/3 owner of Wanderlust. What if we get to a point where we want to sell our business? What if we get to a point where, we don't want to do this anymore? I think that I was like, okay, it can't be attached to something as permanent as our names. But with Wanderlust, our love for travel, our love for the beach, planning destination weddings. I mean, we do plan weddings all over the world. So we're not, privy to just being in Pittsburgh. We have a lead planner now who actually lives in Sarasota, Florida. And we do, as long as you're willing to pay for us to go, we'll go anywhere. But our tagline has kind of become traveling through life one celebration at a time. We feel that a lot of the clients that we work with are, you know, start to finish with their lifetime events. So even though we've done bridal shower, wedding, we roll into, gender reveal parties, we roll into first birthday parties, fifth birthday parties. So we've learned over time, a lot of our clientele kind of stays with us. And that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, and that was actually leads to my next question, because obviously weddings are probably your the majority of what you do, but talk about some of the other events that you do. You say you do birthday parties and gender reveals, and what are some of the main events that your company helps plan?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times we do have return clientele, right? So if they love their wedding planning experience, a year, 2 years later, here comes first baby. And that's when people are really excited about, the gender reveal things that people are doing now, or the big baby showers. We do corporate events as well. So we do have a lot of return clients for things like holiday corporate parties. That's always a big one. But yeah, we are open to planning, micro weddings, intimate small parties. We do, personal dinner parties, 30th birthday surprise parties. Like, I think that luckily people are realizing more and more how many small details go into planning events like this. So, any event, big or small, I have, friends reach out. And yeah, we're really open to planning whatever, but 90% of our business typically starts with the wedding planning process.
Now, there's obviously a lot of different places nationwide, but specifically in our market here in the Pittsburgh region for weddings. You've lived here a lot longer than I have. What are some of your favorite venues in the Pittsburgh market, where when you walk in, before the first decoration is put out, you know that this venue is just something special about it?
Yeah, so the Audrey is a good one in Canonsburg area. It's not super far for me in the South Hills, which is nice because the South Hills is definitely lacking some of the bigger venues, but the Audrey is a really well done one. It's, pretty modernized, super pretty without having to do a lot, which I really like. Winter Garden downtown, also super pretty, super very like modern black and white, a lot of natural light. The staff there is great, food and, bar is all included, which is nice. We kind of like that exclusive, walk in and here's what the price is for kind of all the big things, which is nice. Um, Hotel Monaco is always a great one. Those are probably my three more city-like ones. Pittsburgh Botanic Garden is amazing. It's like indoor, outdoor, out in the Oakdale area, which I also love. They have a ton of great caterers on their, preferred vendor list. So that's probably a good one too, just for the kind of garden feel and not so much city industrial like feel.
No, obviously we do entertainment for weddings, and as musicians, we're always figuring out the newest songs, or the stuff we used to do that doesn't work, and the jokes we used to tell that we have to update. Um, in the last 10 years, what are some of the newest things that you're seeing, kind of people want for their weddings that maybe they wouldn't have asked for 10 years ago, or how have things changed maybe in the last half dozen years or so? What are you seeing that you didn't see 10 years ago?
I would definitely say the line dances have seemed to gone out. I have a lot of people who are like, we don't want shout or we don't want the YMCA. Um, but there's a couple millennials who were like, oh, we need a good Cupid shuffle or we need the wobble. Yeah, I would say tons of Taylor Swift, obviously. tons of like instrumental walking down the aisle to Taylor Swift's Wildest Dream. Like those are things that I've been seeing more frequently. But I would say overall, the best thing I've seen in 10 years is probably the ability to like play more personal like songs on a live entertainment aspect. Like I feel like, quartets and musicians, 2-piece, 3-piece are definitely something that 90% of my couples want now, which I really enjoy. Like there's so many churches where they're like, hey, we have an organist and that's what most people use. And I'm like, okay, what about like an electric violin or a piano, like something different? And I've just enjoyed kind of seeing that growth because I feel like there's so much more than, just your basic church organ. But I also am loving a lot of the non-religious church weddings now. Like I think that it's very up and coming that more and more people aren't getting married in church. And I think it just gives you a little bit more of a personal aspect of like, every bride for a million years walked down the aisle to Canon and D. And now it's like, what could you do that can just be different and make it, more fun, more yourself? People doing things like Wicked for their first dance and it's choreographed, right? Like just something that's more personal and not so much like this is what you do because everybody's doing it,
Yeah, I actually don't remember the last wedding I've done where I played like Here Comes the Bride or Canon and D, where that
Yeah.
used to be. If you knew those two songs, you could do just about any wedding.
Every
So
wedding.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of that as well. So this is a fun question, and don't pick anything that any of your current clients are currently doing. Um, what are because we all have this when you are planning a wedding, and you're working with a client. What are some of your absolute like? Oh, I'll do that if you want me to, but what are your cringiest wedding traditions that you wish would stop?
Definitely the garter toss and the bouquet toss. Those are two of the biggest ones where I'm like, it's cringy 80% of the time, like no one left is single. So it's always just like, why are we doing it? Yeah, the whole like groom up the bride's dress. I'm always just like, I don't know. They're like
It's like
sweaty
grandma's sitting
and
over there, you know.
don't have clothes on. Like it's just always not my favorite thing. It's pretty ick. Um, Also probably like the bridal dance, where people bring out the shots and you take a shot and you get $1 to dance with the bride. Not that it's not a nice gesture to have everybody come up to like dance with, bride or groom, but I think it just takes a lot of time. Like it's a lot to like choreograph getting people to where they need to be, getting the shots ready, working on the money bag. I just like prefer that people not do it because I think it's like a whole just like a buzzkill to the dance floor, trying to get everybody where they're supposed to be. And then it just eats like a lot of time. So those are probably the two bigger things where I'm like, I don't typically recommend them, but if you want to do it, I'm here to help you to make it happen.
Oh yeah, we always say, hey, we wouldn't do that, but you're the client, so they're allowed to they're allowed to do what they want.
Yeah, even just from like a timeline standpoint, like when they're both introduced in, like trying to get the first dance out of the way and trying to get them to cut the cake just so they can be seated and things can kind of start moving for dinner. So many people are like, we don't want to do our first dance before dinner, or we don't want to cut the cake before dinner because it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, from like a venue standpoint of like catering, removing the cake and then cutting the cake, like these are things that make sense. But you always have some pushback and people are like, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then, it's just something we have to figure out in the timeline with how it works. But I would say most of our couples pretty much just trust like how we kind of run it. This is like a timeline, template, go through it and see if you like it. And usually it's fine. But yeah, always just depends on like the food service, how the food's coming out. Is it several courses? Is it stations? Those are all things that we kind of have to figure out to make sure that all those things make sense.
So you have a couple, they just got engaged. What's your best advice to them? Their very first step, what should they be doing?
Guest count, guest list for sure. I think that people don't realize how much it actually costs to invite one person or a couple. And I think it's the most important part to understand where you can have your wedding, how much space you need, and then really just understanding your budget, obviously. So like they kind of go hand in hand. And I think those are two of the most important things. I have tons of people who are like, we picked a venue first, but this is how many people we're at guest wise. And then I have to say, like, unfortunately, this is how many people the place holds. So like you kind of got to start thinking about, is it worth removing people, thinking about how important some of these people are to you. I remember the biggest thing for my parents was, this is how much money we are going to contribute to your wedding. And then when they started to wanting to invite, essentially strangers to me, I'm like, okay, so like this is how much it costs per person. And this is how much you're going to have to pay to invite, this person from your job that I've never met. So yeah, just thinking about the importance and then what it costs per person. I remember specifically saying to my mom, like, I don't want my husband to have to meet people for the first time at his wedding. Like, I just don't think that's ideal and realistic. So
Well,
that helped a lot. Just saying, like, as long as it's people that like we both know in some regard, I'm fine with it. But anything above and beyond that, like this is what it costs per person. And I think people were shocked to hear that like a decently nice, somewhat luxury wedding in Pittsburgh, when all is said and done with flowers and decor and food and booze and the cost of the space and the cost of the chair, you're looking at, $500, $600, $700 per person. And I think that frightens people because all they're thinking is like, oh, what do you mean? Like food and, food is 110 per person and the booze is 35 per person. And I'm like, when all is said and done, when you get that final number and you divide it by the 150 people you invited, it's a lot more than the plate of their food. And I think that math is important.
and as far as like people seeking out the services of a wedding planner, let's talk time frame. Like, what's the absolute earliest that you would want to talk to somebody about that versus what is the shortest crunch time? Like, hey, if they called us inside of this window, there's no way we could pull it off.
Yeah. So the nice thing about my team is that I have about 13 other employees who are at least day of coordinators or lead planners. So I would say the shortest I have done is about 6 weeks. I've had clients panic call and basically say, I've done all of the things, but we need somebody there for the day. I could typically make that happen. I definitely have a team. Being that my sister owns the business with me, we do usually have at least 2 or 3 weddings in a weekend. But that's not every weekend, right? So the fact that one of the two of us can typically go to another wedding, we do have a wonderful full-time employee, Renee. Shout out Renee. Between the three of us, typically one of us can show up to a wedding and essentially coordinate it. In terms of like full scale planning, I usually say 18 months to 12 months out is ideal if they have just gotten engaged, if they don't have a venue yet, if they don't have vendors yet. So I would say 18 is like where I would like to be for more full scale partial clients. A year at like the least if they do need a lot of that help still. But in terms of like month of day of coordination, I would say, we've done it in 3 to 4 weeks without wanting to, but we certainly can.
Fantastic. And if anybody is listening to this podcast, Allie is offering $200 off her services if package is booked before March of 2026, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Very good. So thank you for taking care of our listeners. Well, thank you so much for your time and letting us inside the world of your wedding planning. And for anybody listening, services at wanderlustweddingsandevents.com is how you get in touch with Allie and Wanderlust Weddings. And thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.